In today's video, I'm going to give you my review of Fujifilm's GF 110mm f2. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Dylan Golby. In this week's Gear Short, I want to talk about Fujifilm's GF 110mm f2 for the GFX system, why I love it and why I invested in it. Now honestly, this isn't the video for you if you're on the fence and looking for a reason not to buy it. I'm going to talk about a lot of positive things here with a couple of small negatives at the end, but honestly this is a fantastic lens, so let's jump right into it. For those of you who might be new to the GFX system or used to converting between different systems, this is roughly the equivalent of an 85mm f1.6 in 35mm full frame, or pretty much a direct equivalent of the 56 f1.2 for the Fujifilm X system. So that puts it square in the range of that sort of classic portrait lens, as it might be called. So as to why I chose to invest in this lens. Now, I wanted to get a larger format system for my Tattoos of Asia project, so I was looking at a lot of the full-frame mirrorless cameras, and I was looking at the GFX series, and just trying to decide, which one had the lenses that I wanted to use for this project. Now, I wanted a short telephoto or a classic portrait lens for my close-up portraits of the people that I was meeting and photographing, and honestly, I couldn't find anything of this quality. Now, I tried the Sony 85G Master, I owned previously the Nikon system, so I had the 85 1.4G, and I had tried the Canon 85 f1.2, which at the time, I don't believe when I was searching for this, they actually had that out for the RF cameras, so that came a little bit after I made the purchase. But what I was looking for was an absolutely excellent quality short telephoto, really sharp, so plenty of detail, great subject separation, and I landed on the GF 110mm f2 pretty much for the reason that you'll see in this photograph here. Now, what you can see here is just extreme subject separation and absolutely fantastic detail. The one thing that really sets this lens apart, I think, from the 85mm lenses that you'll find on the 35mm full frame or the 56mm that you'll find on the XT series, is that it just has absolutely fantastic sharpness wide open and a beautiful fall off to extremely soft bokeh in the background. And so it was that basically I couldn't find in any of the other lenses. So I wanted that extreme shallow depth of field, and I wanted to have really good sharpness wide open, but the main thing that I really wanted to have was just that beautiful subject separation, especially for when I do some of my full-length panoramic shots as well. So what I'll end up doing with a shot like this is just photographing the people and then photographing a set of images, like a panorama around them, so that I can keep that extremely shallow depth of field, that great subject separation, but also pull the background a little bit closer due to my distance away from them. So if you want to learn how something like that is done, I do have a video about that process, and I'll link to that up here for you. But those are the basic two reasons that I wanted to own this lens. So on to autofocus. Now, medium format systems are not really known for having the snappiest autofocus for, tracking wildlife or tracking sports and things like that. But when it comes to the 110mm, it's actually quite a fast lens. Now, especially on the GFX 100 or the GFX 100S with the PDAF autofocus system, you can now track walking subjects pretty easily. Now, I've moved to using my GFX for my engagement sessions, and so when I've got a couple walking towards me, I can now comfortably walk backwards and know that the camera will still track and I will get every single image pin sharp as we're both moving. So now that's a huge improvement for medium format systems, and it goes to show you that, you can do a lot more with them than you used to be able to. So I wouldn't worry about autofocus speed unless you're really looking to get fast moving action. In terms of accuracy, this has improved a lot over the firmware updates that have come to the cameras over the years. I remember using it on the GFX 50S with the version 1 firmware, and it was, touch and go. You would hit a lot of the time, but then it would seem to have hit and just have completely missed when you actually shot the photo. So things have changed. With the GFX 100S, I find that it doesn't miss at all, and even with my 50R, which is I guess the equivalent of version 4 firmware for the 50S, it was really accurate. Now on those cameras it is a little bit slower, tracking is not quite so good, but in single point, single AF, absolutely no problems at all. It will nail it every single time. Now, of course, Fuji's face detect algorithm still needs a little bit of work. It will often hit the wrong eye, or it will focus just behind the eye or just in front of the eye and things like that, which can be a bit of an issue with this lens. But for single point AF, it's absolutely excellent. And as long as you're willing to control that focus point, it's just fine. Image quality is where medium format lenses really set themselves apart from their 35mm and APS-C counterparts. So with this 110mm, there really isn't much to say. It is sharp, sometimes it's almost too sharp. It has pretty much non-existent chromatic aberrations. When it comes to flare, there's actually a little flare quality about it that I do like. If you get a light very close to the edge of the lens, you will start to see this sort of blooming effect. And so rather than, where you would just see a loss of contrast and maybe some visual ghosting in some other lenses, with this you just get this sort of beautiful puff of light around the side of the frame, which once you know how to create it, can be really useful in your image making as well. However, the main reason that I chose this lens over all the other ones that I was looking at and chose to invest in the GFX system was because of the way that this lens renders at f2. There's just a little something special when you shoot this wide open. Now, to explain it would be kind of difficult, so I'll show you guys an image. What you get to see here is essentially extremely sharp within the plane of focus, and then a beautiful fall off that gives this sort of, I hate to use that cliche, but it's almost got this sort of three-dimensional effect to it. So you get this really up close and personal feel with what's in focus, and it sort of forces you to look at it, but you get a sense of depth as well. So I absolutely adore this rendering, and that's pretty much why I invested in the lens and why I have the GFX system. So with image quality, there's not really much else to say. You can't really fault this lens. It's absolutely excellent. So in terms of negatives, I mean, we have a lens that's beautiful image quality. It's a short telephoto, so if you're into that sort of rendering, then it's the option that you have, and it's a great option. Nothing that can be really done about this, but it is big and it is heavy. So it's over 1 kilogram in weight. It takes up a good portion of your bag when you take it out with you, and especially if you want to protect this huge front element that you have on here, you're going to need this giant hood. And it's not so bad when you're actually using it. It does make the lens really, really large, really long, and kind of intimidating. But the main thing is when you're actually transporting it, because it goes back over such a huge lens, let's get that on there, it actually makes the lens extremely fat. And so when it comes to putting it in a bag, it's kind of a pain. Not much of a negative, I know, but there really isn't too much that I can say about this. The only other thing is down to the lens design, and Fujifilm have used this in quite a few of their lenses, which is the little floating element, and I believe that's used for focus, but if you actually shake the lens a little bit, you can hear it rattling around when the camera's off and the magnets aren't holding it in place. Same thing that you'll find with, say, the XF 50 to 140mm or the 90mm f2 on the X system, but you can sort of hear it rattling around. It sort of makes your heart miss a beat a little bit, and I get that that's part of the lens design, and it's not really a negative as such, but it is a little disconcerting and something that I do worry about as I transport this lens all the time. The answer to the question, should you invest in a lens like this, is pretty much the reason why I never recommend lenses to anybody. Now, I get quite a few questions in my email and on the comments on this YouTube channel, just asking, hey, should I buy this lens? Or which one do you recommend between a 110mm and a 50mm? And just questions like that. And I know they come from a good place and a place of somebody really trying to want to understand what they should purchase. But I feel like if you are asking that question, then you probably shouldn't make your purchase just yet. You probably shouldn't make your purchase decision based on what I have to say to you. Now, if you've looked at the photos in this video and you think, hey, I'd like to make photos like that, probably also not a good reason to invest in a lens. Now, I hate to say it, but experience is the best thing that you can put towards a lens purchase decision. And that basically means, if you take a look at this focal length, whether you've used this focal length on, say, the XT series or the, the full frame systems of the world, and you've said, hey, that short telephoto is the way that I like to work. It is, I enjoy that narrower field of view. I enjoy being a little bit further back from my subject and getting that sort of perceived compression of the world. If you enjoy that, I would say do not hesitate if you're on the GFX system. This is the lens that will give you that, and there really isn't anything optically to fault about it, unless maybe you could say that it's too perfect. So if you are one of the people who has sent me a purchasing question or put a purchasing question in the comments below, don't feel like I've ignored you. I just don't really have a way to say, yes, I don't want to be the one who's responsible for you purchasing a lens that maybe you won't like. What I would like to be is a resource for you to look at maybe the qualities of this lens or the way that it operates and decide, well, okay, that's for me, that's not for me, and then make the decision on your own. I don't want to be the person who says you should definitely buy the 110 over the, say, the 120 f4. I don't want to be responsible for that because it might be the wrong decision for you, even though it is the right decision for me. So having said all of that, I do hope that you guys have enjoyed this quick look at the GF 110mm f2. If you have any questions about the lens itself, please do feel free to put them below. I'm happy to answer those questions. I do have a slideshow after this with a few of the images that I've made using this lens, and hopefully they'll give you a little bit more of an idea of how this lens renders and whether it might be for you. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.